okay? Or maybe it has to do more with retail. If retail is getting more expensive, find a quote that says, oh, you know, a pottery barn just opened here. Is that expensive? I don't know. I never shopped there. Paragraph 4. Why is this happening now? Paragraph 5. What does the future hold? You're not gonna find. You might, but I wouldn't count on finding an essay that tells you what the future holds. So you're gonna have to speculate. You're gonna have to extrapolate based on what is happening now. This is what I think will happen. Okay. I did find an interesting article. I was wondering about the coronavirus and gentrification. I found an article about I'm going to stop this now. I found an article about gentrification and the coronavirus that talks about how small towns upstate are being gentrified. That could be an interesting topic. There is a part in the Senna where he talks about rural America and gentrification. But this article, it was from the Daily Telegraph. You could Google it. It talks about how rich people are fleeing the city and they're like, I'm going to go live in the country. And then people that live in the country, poor people, are getting. It's could be an interesting topic. Is that gentrification if it's the country? I guess so. Why not? I mean, well, is it though? Because Ruth Glass says it the Ruth Glass definition from the 60s says it's urban. It's the gentry moving back from the country to the city. But I digress. Okay, so that would be those of you that are doing option 1. Remember, the rough draft is due a week from today for essay 4. And then I guess Tuesday I'll go over people that want to do option 2. We'll do a little rundown. But remember, if you're doing option 2, keep in mind that oh, Daisy, you sent me your essay. Oh yeah, I did get that. Yeah, I'll get back to you in a second. If you're doing option 2 of essay 4, keep in mind that the whole point of that essay is it's for people that want a little more of a challenge, who don't want to necessarily follow so much of a formula. So don't expect me to just tell you how to do option 2 on Tuesday. Don't wait till Tuesday to start writing option 2. Okay. A quick word about essay 3, and then we'll talk about the final exam reading. So essay 3, I got most of the essay 3s back to you already. And I'm looking, there's a few maybe I didn't get back yet, but give me to the end of the day. And then do hand in essay 3. We need to get those essay 3s in, okay? So this weekend, if I haven't heard from you, I'm gonna email you. If you haven't heard from me, email me. And if you're just joining us, Melanie, I see you're here. If I haven't heard from you in a while, please feel free to get in touch with me so we can get you caught up one-on-one. It's never too late to get caught up, okay? And my grade sheet for essay 3 is pretty thin, okay? You guys could skate out of here with full credit and a good grade. All you gotta do is put in some work, and I'm gonna help you get through it. This is a difficult situation, but we could flip it into a good opportunity, okay? So part of getting out of here with that good grade is making sure that you do a good job on the polar. The polar? However you say his name. I forgot to open that up. So let me go find the polar, the polar. Anyway, go find it in the shared folder. I suggest looking for the annotated version, and I'm gonna post Poland. I'm gonna post a link to that in the chat. Where's the link? Here we go. Copy. And so if you can't find it, links in the chat. And let's take, I'm going to share the screen with you, so you'll also be seeing it on your screen. There we go. Done. So we left off on page 2, and we did page 2. Now we're going to do page 3. Okay, so starting at page 3, we're going to look at the rest of the quotes, and then that'll be it for Poland. We're going to look at the other reading on Tuesday. Okay, so this is on page 3, and if you follow that link, you should be able to find it in bold. Okay, otherwise just look on your own copy. That's on the top of page 3. Poland writes, guided by no natural instinct. Oh, also, I didn't hear from anyone about my question that I emailed around about the rules for wise eating. Does anyone want to share now? You can talk, or you can write it in the chat. Your rules for wise eating. Obviously today's Ramadan, so there's a rule for wise eating there, which is fasting, right? A lot of cultures do fasting. Ramadan is just one example. Anyone at all?
What is the purpose of the...
What's the question?
What is the final in the first place? I'm still kind of...
What is the final exam?
Yeah.
Cover? Oh, okay. So the final exam is, if we look here, it's these 2 readings. It's the Poland reading, The Ethics of Eating Animals, and the Wallace reading, Consider the Lobster. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So it's those 2 readings, and you're going to get a question that asks you to connect them, and you have 3 days to write an essay in response to that question. And so that's what it is, right? And it's supposed to be 500 words. Let me go back to the essay.
5 days from when it was posted, or the day you're going to tell it? Are you going to tell it?
From the day that you start, right? So, and I think you're going to have to start the day it's posted. And I believe that will be, if we look at the syllabus, I think it's the 12th. I didn't close my syllabus, did I? That'd be stupid. I have one open here. Yeah, it's the 12th. So I think it'll probably be posted on the 12th, and you'll have till the 15th to finish it.
Okay.
And next week, thank you, Rose. I should remind you, next week, we're going to do a practice test on Blackboard. It won't affect your grade, so don't stress about it. In fact, the whole point of it is to make you not stress, so that you feel confident when you take the final exam on Blackboard. So some of you might not have done that before. Thanks. Any other questions, or does anyone have any rules for wise eating from your culture or a culture you're aware of? Or from American culture? Where does American culture stand on the rules for wise eating when it comes to McDonald's and fast food, do you think? It used to be the rule was eat at McDonald's, right? That's the American way. But then I feel like 10 or 15 years ago, the documentaries and books came out, and the rules for wise eating said, don't eat at McDonald's. So where do we stand on that? That's what I was wondering about this morning. What is the American rule for wise eating regarding fast food? Because it seems to say both eat it and don't eat it. That'd be an example of what George Orwell called doublethink. But we're not doing George Orwell, we're doing Poland. So let's continue reading. So he's been talking about the rules for wise eating. You guys don't want to share about that, so let's continue with this quote. Guided by no natural instinct, the prodigious and open-ended human appetite is liable to get us into all sorts of trouble, well beyond the stomach ache. Okay, so this is part of the omnivore's dilemma. We can eat everything. It's going to get us in trouble. For if nature is silent, what's to stop the human omnivore from eating anything, including most alarmingly, other human omnivores? So if I eat everything, maybe I'm going to eat you, right? Or you're going to eat me. This is a problem. A potential for savagery lurks in the creature capable of eating anything. If nature won't draw a line around human appetite, then human culture must step in, as indeed it has done, bringing the omnivore's eating habits under the government of all the various taboos, foremost the one against cannibalism, right? So we can eat everything, but we are forbidden by culture to eat humans, right? What are some other things that we're forbidden from eating by, what do all cultures agree we can't eat? Yeah?
I'm thinking.
Well, you're not supposed to eat your pet, right? Customs, rituals, table manners, and culinary conventions found in every culture. So all cultures don't all agree on what you can and can't eat, but they all have rules about what you can and can't eat. And also how to eat. Table manners are not food, but how you eat the food. There is a short and direct path from the omnivore's dilemma to the astounding number of ethical rules with which people have sought to regulate eating for as long as they have been living in groups. So his point here is that we are not, well, I guess there are cannibals, but those are, Rudy, that's very much the exception, cannibal culture. Like 99.9% of cultures. And I don't think there are currently cannibals.
I was reading something where like women that were pregnant will sometimes eat their placenta and like have their family, like have their spouse drink their breast milk. Does that count?
Wow. That is not cannibalism, but and it's supposed to be healthy. And some people even save the placenta and freeze it, and it helps with menopause, I read. Although I don't know how scientific this stuff is. But yeah, that's a good example, Rose, because that's things that people feel strongly about that. People are like, you should eat the placenta. Right. And then there's other people that say, no, don't eat the placenta, right? The same thing about breastfeeding in general is a good example. In the 50s, there was this movement against breast milk towards formula, right? Suddenly people said, let's not drink breast milk, let's drink formula. And now there's a move back towards breast milk. That's a great example. I mean, if you were to write about that in the final exam, I think you would do well.
Also, like, can't you talk about how like in the 50s, it probably talked about formula because of commercial was on the rise?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think, in fact, you're really onto something. I think probably there was a corporate push, right, to make breast milk seem undesirable, and probably the companies making formula were behind it. And if you're really interested, I mean, I'm sure it's connected to World War II, right? Because in World War II, there were companies making powdered milk for the war effort, and they were like, well, how do we pivot to the post-war? Let's make formula, and how do we sell formula? Well, we'll convince mothers that breast milk is I don't know, gross. I think, I mean, I'm just speculating, but there's probably something there. And just, I don't want to get too lost in this, but if you just think about the 50s in general, the 50s were a time when, people fetishize things like plastic, things made by machine, ready-made things that we're only now starting to move away from. Okay, so just the general point of this quote to take away from is nature doesn't give us rules of what to eat. Nature's like, humans, eat whatever, right? So culture steps in and puts rules on us for what we can eat. Okay, next quote. I mean, and read the whole article. These are just the quotes I wanted to talk about. You might find other quotes useful, but these are the quotes that I think you may want to quote when you're doing the final exam. And if anyone is coming in and missed a couple and you're like, what are we doing? What's this final exam? How does this reading relate to it? Just follow along and then email me for a more in-depth explanation, okay? But I'm just gonna go through these quotes for right now, for those of you that are all caught up. Next quote, eating meat has become morally problematic, at least for people who take the trouble to think about it. Vegetarianism is more popular than it has ever been, and animal rights, the fringiest of fringe movements until just a few years ago, is rapidly finding its way into the cultural mainstream. I think that's true. You meet more and more vegetarians, more and more vegans, and it seems more and more normal. In fact, personally, I've come to know like a lot of very conservative, older people. They have heart attacks, and then they become vegans, which used to seem like such a counterculture thing to be, but now, as the meat is giving these like 67-year-old conservatives heart attacks, they're like, well, now I'm a vegan. Okay, so that quote is just showing that animal rights and veganism is becoming more mainstream. What's animal rights? Think PETA. He mentions PETA here. Who is PETA? PETA are the ones that if you're wearing a mink coat, you're a celebrity, they throw red paint on you to signify how you killed the animal to get your mink coat. That's PETA. They're protesting against cruelty and against hunting, killing animals for sport. Okay, he says, in this quote, let me read the quote. He says, it may be that as a civilization, we're groping towards a higher plane of consciousness. It may be that our moral enlightenment has advanced to the point where the practice of eating animals, like our former practices of keeping slaves, former practice of keeping slaves or treating women as inferior beings can now, there's tons of typos, I'm sorry, be seen for the barbarity it is, a relic of an ignorant past that very soon will fill us with shame. Okay, so here Poland suggests a romantic vision of history where it's like an arc. There's a quote written on a middle school that I saw that says I think it's from Martin Luther King. He says the moral arc of history is long, but it bends towards justice. Did anyone go to that middle school? Check me on that quote. The notion that that our morals get better and better as history goes along, right? I'm not sure I would agree with that. Maybe. I'd have to think about it. But he says, why are we treating animals more ethically? Well, maybe we're just becoming more moral, right? But then he says that's just one idea. His other idea that you can quote here, he says, but it could also be that the cultural norms and rituals that used to allow people to eat meat without agonizing about it have broken down for other reasons. Perhaps as the sway of tradition in our eating decisions weakens, habits we once took for granted are thrown up in the air, where they're more easily buffeted by the force of a strong idea or the breeze of fashion. Okay, so here he suggests that the reason there's more vegetarianism is not because we're becoming more moral, but because we are losing our traditions, right? So it used to be your cultural traditions told you what to eat. He says if those cultural traditions fade, you might be more susceptible to new rules for eating. Which also has the other implication that humans do need some rules, right? So if you don't have a cultural rule that goes away, you're gonna look for some other rule. Why do we have a need to be told what to eat? Do we have a need to be told what to eat? Do you have a need to be told what to eat? These are all questions to think about, okay? You're going to want to think these through. You're going to want to have an arsenal of thoughts, right? So you can be ready to answer the question. Next quote. For at the same time, many of us seem eager to extend the circle of our moral consideration to other species. In our factory farms, we're inflicting more suffering on animals than at any time in history. One by one, science is dismantling our claims to uniqueness as a species, discovering that such things as culture, tool-making, language, and even possibly self-consciousness are not, as we used to think, the exclusive properties of Homo sapiens. Okay, so in this section, he's pointing out some contradictions. He's saying we're on the one hand, we're treating animals more and more cruelly. So if you go to a factory farm, the conditions are not great for animals. But on the other hand, science is also showing us that animals are not different from us. They are smart. They have feelings. They can think, right? So he says that's a contradiction. And the other word he uses for contradiction is schizoid, right? Think about the there are many, this is a common myth. This is not what schizophrenia is, but we think of schizophrenia as someone that has two personalities. What was that M. Night Shyamalan movie about the person with 27 personalities? Anyway.
Split.
What was it?
Split.
Ah, yeah, split. Split personality. So we have a split personality, a schizoid quality with animals today. I think this is a really good quote, actually. He makes a good point here. With animals today, in which sentiment and brutality exist side by side. Half the dogs in America will receive Christmas presents this year. Yet few of us ever pause to consider the life of the pig, an animal easily as intelligent as a dog that becomes a Christmas ham, right? So on the one hand, we give the dog a present. On the other hand, we kill the pig, right? Even though I think pigs are more intelligent than dogs. Mm-hmm. At least that's what vegetarians tell me, right? So we tolerate this schizophrenia, this contradiction, because the life of the pig has moved out of view. So this is also important to him in this conclusion, is that the idea that we don't see the animal anymore. We don't see the pig. Do you guys see pigs? Have you guys seen chickens being slaughtered or pigs being slaughtered?
I've seen the chicken, like if you go to a poultry shop.
Yes, you can see it. It used to be the chicken, the guy would come deliver your chicken and cut its head off right in your backyard or your front step. But that doesn't happen anymore. Now we think of a chicken as already cut up, already not just slaughtered, but already sliced and diced. We think of meat not as coming from animals, but he says from the grocery store, right? Where it looks as little like an animal as possible. And think about how children are introduced to meat now. Children get chicken nuggets, which does not look like chicken, right? There is no nugget in the chicken. So if that's what you're told a chicken is when you're a kid, you see where I'm going with that. All right, his conclusion focuses on this schizophrenia, this contradiction, and also the not seeing the animal. That eye contact, he says, he talks about this guy, John Berger, who says you should look animals in the eye. He says that eye contact, always slightly uncanny, had brought the vivid daily reminder that animals were both critically like us and unlike us. In their eyes, we glimpse something unmistakably familiar, pain, fear, courage, but also something irretrievably other, like something we can't connect with. Upon this paradox, people built a relationship in which they felt they could both honor and eat animals without looking away. So if you know your animal, you can resolve the paradox, the contradiction, right? You're like, you are my friend, but I will eat you, right? Not you're my friend, but I respect you, but I will eat you. But that accommodation has pretty much broken down. Nowadays, it seems we either look away or become vegetarians. So now we pick one or the other. For my own part, neither option seemed especially tantalizing. Certainly looking away was not completely off the table, which might explain how it was I found myself attempting to read Peter Singer in a steakhouse. So you'll remember Peter Singer is the one that talks about how you shouldn't eat steak. You should be a vegetarian. So that's he ends by talking about his own contradiction. Yes.
So I feel like a lot of people in America necessarily turn to vegan because, like, not necessarily because of meat in a general as a whole is bad, but in America because we put so much chemicals on it and it actually causes disease. There's a lot of people back home when I went in Africa, they eat chicken just as much, but they're not getting as sick as much of like the people here from eating meat. I think it's just because of like the factories and what they're spraying with and injecting the animal, like the way they're treating the animals, and it's affecting us in the long run.
Yeah, Rose, that's a good point. Not just the way they inject them, but like the factory farm chickens in America, it's just like they are standing in like feces like this thick. It's really just gross. Yeah, that I think is a great point. And I think it connects with this idea of looking away, not wanting to look away. That he talks about, the idea that you're gonna, once you look at how animals are not just treated, but like the kind of gross conditions that they're, I guess, raised and slaughtered in, you also become a vegan or a vegetarian. That's a good point. Anyone else? Remember, you can also make comments in the chat if you don't want to do the microphone thing. But these are great examples of what you should be thinking about and the kinds of things that are going to be useful on the final exam, the kind of insights. Okay, and there's going to be more coming. Let's talk about what's due for Tuesday. So remember, the draft of Essay 4 isn't due until a week from today, but you can feel free to have me look at it. Sometimes if you get it in early enough, you could even have me look at multiple drafts, which would help your grade probably. And you know, if it's the end of the semester, if you're trying to like really get your grade up, this is a good opportunity to do so. But what I want you to look at for next time is the other final exam reading, which is this one, Wallace, Consider the Lobster. And I've sent you a link to it, and it's in the shared folder. But I will send you another link in my recap email. I'll also send you a link to this video once I post it, and I will send you another optional assignment, things to think about from today's class. And I feel like, Rose, you already did it with the example you gave, but it's going to ask about this contradiction, right? The notion
there's a question in the slides again separate, or should I just wait until the 12th to answer the question?
Is there a question in the slides, did you say?
Yeah, I didn't hear what you said before.
Like, oh, I said, sorry. I said I'm going to send you an optional, like, practice question.
Oh, okay.
Basically, it's just, if we were meeting in class, I would have you guys get in groups and answer a question. But since we're doing it this way, I'm just going to email you a question and have you just write up an answer on your own. But it's not graded. It's just something to help you think through the essay. So that is that for today. Remember, if you haven't got your Essay 3 final draft back by the end of the day, let me know. There's a few things that could go wrong, most likely being that you sent me, maybe you revised the Google Doc and I didn't know it was the final draft, or I didn't know you were done revising. Anyway, and I'm going to get after you too. It doesn't mean you're in trouble. It just means I want to make sure that we're all on top of our deadlines. So, yeah, and just let me know if you have any questions about anything, especially people who are like, what is this final exam he keeps talking about? I'm sure there's someone like that out there. If you are that someone, get in touch with me. We'll clear it all up. And by the end of the conversation, you will say, that is the final exam. I am ready and confident and aware. Okay? Okay, so have a great weekend, and I will talk to you all on Tuesday, or many of you hopefully before, if you have questions. Okay?